Hello and welcome to another episode of Yalla, the podcast of Jewish students brought to you by UJS. I'm Matty, your digital engagement sabbatical officer.
I'm Taliah, your SAB for sixth form and mental health awareness.
As it is Veganuary, we are delighted to be joined by Ben Rebuck, better known as Ben's Vegan Kitchen, to discuss his career and top cooking tips. Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being with us. To start with, would you mind just telling us a bit about yourself and a bit about your early life?
Sure. Yeah, so I grew up in Northwest London. It's a very typical story for a lot of Jews who live in the UK. Yeah, wasn't particularly Jewish growing up. I went to Heder, I did a bar mitzvah, but after that I got a bit bored of it and I was sort of, didn't fancy being involved in the community anymore. So kind of avoided it, blocked it out, and just went on with my life. But it sort of found me at the time in my life when I kind of needed it a little bit, and I ended up making Aliyah in 2015, and I lived in Israel for 3 years before moving back. And yeah, here I am now, somehow a spokesperson for young Jewish people in the UK, and it's a great responsibility to have, and something that I'm really thriving on.
So how come you left the community then?
Well, I didn't leave per se. I think it was I talk about this quite a lot whenever I speak to people. I sort of always it's kind of, I guess, an anecdote that I talk about, that I didn't really get on with Jewish people. I think maybe it's a generational thing. Like, I'm a little bit older than you guys. I'm 32 now, and perhaps growing up, the Jews that I spent a lot of time with were very materialistic. I know there are still a lot who are quite like that because of the community per se, but yeah, I think I didn't really grow up that way, and it wasn't something that, it didn't matter to me if someone had back then, if you had like a new phone, it was like a massive deal. And I had a friend who had a PlayStation in his car, like it was ridiculous, like things like that. And it was cool, but it didn't mean anything to me. It was very like vapid, and I kind of saw through it at a young age. So, growing up, I didn't go to Jewish school. There was always one or two Jews in the schools that I went to, but nothing ever more than that. And yeah, I just didn't spend a lot of time with Jews. And then in 2008, I think it was, there was an incident, or maybe 2009, there was an incident in Israel with an Egyptian flotilla. I don't know if you remember it at all. Long story short, what we're seeing now off the back of October 7th, it was kind of similar to that. It was very early days in social media still. Everyone was kind of just on Facebook, and there was just a lot of hatred towards Jews that I was seeing from people that I knew. And it kind of came out as, no, we don't hate Jews, we just hate Israel. And I was like, but the Israelis that you hate are Jews. They're like, yeah, but we don't hate you. And then lo and behold, all the friends I had who were, I had friends from Lebanon, from Egypt, all places like that. It wasn't possible for me to be friends with them anymore, because the stuff that they were saying about me and to me, and all of that, it was pretty hard. So it kind of brought me back into Judaism, made me realize that actually it was far more important to me than I realized at the time. I've always been a very avid Zionist. My grandma's lived in Israel for 45 plus years. So I've always been going to Israel. Every holiday we would go there for a couple of weeks. So it's always been in my blood. It just, I think it's nice. It found me when, like I said, when I needed it, rather than it was forced upon me. And I think that's what means more to me about it.
And then what led you to decide to make Aliyah and then 3 years later decide to come back to the UK?
Making Aliyah is a lot easier than the decision to leave Israel. I can assure you that. For me, it's always something that I kind of wanted to do. As I just mentioned, I'd been going there my whole life, but growing up in the sort of 90s, 2000s, actually Tel Aviv was really, really dangerous. It was a very dangerous place, not somewhere that I'd ever go with my family. Excuse me. And my sister had actually made Aliyah in 2015, and she'd moved to Tel Aviv, and she was like, you've got to come out here. It's really cool. It's so different to, my grandma lived in Herzliya Patur. I'm sure people listening know about Herzliya. It's a nice, quiet part of Israel. It's pretty affluent. There's a nice beach. There's a few like hummus bars, shisha bars, whatever, but it's not got anything really more to it. Whereas Tel Aviv, I went in 2015, and I was having a really tough time actually with anti-Semitism. I'm a football fan. I watch Chelsea play, and Chelsea fans are really horrible. And I think it was another point in my life where I was sort of hiding my Jewish identity, and I was having a real like identity crisis. And I remember going to Israel to visit my sister for her birthday, and I was in a club. It's a really terrible club that I would never go to anymore. But I remember, I had a couple of drinks before, and I remember standing in the club, sort of looking around at everyone, and I was like, I never have to explain anything to these people. I was like, I don't have to explain what Pesach is. I don't have to explain why I don't eat ham, or why, on Saturday shit. Like, I just don't have to explain anything to anyone. And immediately I felt like really emotional, to be completely honest. Like, I really felt like it was this sort of light bulb moment where, I was at home, and it made such a huge impact on my life just being in that club. I mean, drinking will do that to you anyway. It will make you, it will kind of make you feel like this is a student podcast. You guys know what that party lifestyle is about. But yeah, it was just it was a real moment that I was like, okay, I kind of want to live here. I was building a career in the UK. I was working in property actually, and I was like, yeah, property, nice Jewish career, can get a bit of money and do it like this and like that. But after like a year of doing it, I was like, not really feeling this. The money was crap, and I hated where I worked. So I was like, I'm just going to go. I'm going to go, and I'm going to see what it's like. And if I regret it, at least I've done it. So for me, it was a case of do it, and you can always change your mind. But I loved living in Israel. It really was, I suppose, like very like formative years for me. Like I really grew as a person. I came back completely different. I mean, I left for a number of reasons. Israel is a really difficult place to live. I always say that people hate Israel for absolutely no reason, but I think if they knew your average Israeli, they'd have a pretty good reason to hate us. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just think the lifestyle really grates on you. I was there 2.5 years, and sometimes you've got a bill to pay, and you don't want to you just want to pay your bills, and everything there is like a balagan. The word is there for a reason. It's a balagan. Everything is difficult. You'd call up your gas company, and you'd be like, press 1 for Hebrew, 2 for Arabic, 3 for Russian, and you'd go through, and I'd be like, I don't speak enough Hebrew to pay my bloody bill, and you just end up feeling like you're getting shafted week in, week out. So, everyone always says when you make Aliyah, don't let the bureaucracy get to you. But unfortunately, 2.5 years in, it did, and I left, and I came back, and it was the right time for me to leave. I still go back all the time. My mum lives there, my sister lives there, my grandma's still there. A lot of my friends, please God, are thriving over there as well. So yeah, it's somewhere that I always recommend to people, especially Jews from the UK, go over there, spend a year, lead tour, like whatever you have to do, like just spend time there and see it for what it is. It's not necessarily that holiday place. Don't go and eat hummus and chips on the beach. Like, see the real Israel. Go up north, go to the south. It's an amazing place.
Yeah, so you said that you were working in property, and then you moved to Israel, and then you came back. How did cooking kind of feature in that? Like, how did you get into it?
So I've always kind of worked. When I was over there, I wasn't working in property. I was working for a startup who were actually a football media company, and I'd always wanted to work in football. I'd worked in media over here before working in property, and when I came back, I came back, and I had 4 or 5 jobs between 2018 when I came back, and also when I stopped working, which was 2022. So in the 4 years before doing what I do now full time, I was working in various media companies doing social media stuff. I was leading a team at one company of 13 people. I was then head of social at another company. So I've always been in social. So for me, getting into doing my own thing was just something that I was, it kind of felt obvious to me. It was, I wanted my own something to show for what I was doing. And it was a bit of a, everyone likes to talk about side hustles. It was a side hustle. It was, at first, I'm eating vegan food. Here's the food that I'm eating to show my friends that actually you can eat well and be vegan. And that's kind of how it started. And I would post pretty horrible looking pictures to Instagram and get, 50 likes, 60 likes. And that was it. But I kept grafting away. Like, I know social, I know how to work it. I know sort of the best practices, but it's been trial and error. And and I quit my job in June 2022, which now that it's 2024 does sound ages ago, but it's only been a year and a half of doing this full time. But I quit my job with 40,000 followers because I was like, I can make this work. I was getting a few brand deals here and there, making a little bit of money on the side, and it was great. You've got a full-time job where you get a guaranteed income each month, but you're making an extra £700-800 every month, doing this. It's almost free money for me because I was just doing very little to kind of get this stuff. So I was like, you know what, if I quit my job and I really go all in and try and make this work, I can, and I've been able to. And as we speak, I'm 330,000 followers nearly, and it's growing kind of week on week. I've been on Saturday Kitchen. I'm going on Saturday Kitchen again in a couple of weeks' time. Just trying to raise my profile and do things to, I guess, raise the profile of the community as well in the UK and the world. So, I've been very lucky to build a platform, but now it's just about using my platform to not only make vegan food, but also talk about, Jews and our plight and Israel and the things that I care about, because it's my page. No one can tell me what to do with it. You know what I mean?
100%. What made you decide in the first place to become vegan?
Living in Israel, actually. I think a lot of people don't know that Israel has the highest capita of vegans and vegetarians in the world. Well, per capita, I should say. So I think it's something like 15% of the population is vegan. Maybe it's a little bit less, and I think like 20% of the population is vegetarian. So there's a huge portion of that country which is massively into literally eating vegetables. So whilst I was over there, it was something that I tried and I really enjoyed, and it's easy to do there. Hummus, falafel, salads, all fresh. You go to the shuk and you buy vegetables for like, you get a whole bag full for like £5, and yeah, it's easy to live like that over there. So yeah, Israel also actually leads the way in vegan food innovation. I put out a video halfway through last year just talking about the food tech in Israel, and it's massive. Tech in Israel is a huge thing, but they're really applying it to food, and there's some really big companies who have come out of Israel who are making vegan steaks, like redefined meat, and there's Plantish who make vegan like salmon fillets, and there's Yo Egg and Just Egg, and there's so many ridiculous things that are all coming from Israel because they want people to just eat plants more, really. So yeah, it was a great place to go vegan, and yeah, it certainly helped me in my career.
So what would you say then to someone who wants to go vegan but is maybe scared or afraid to do so?
So I always say to people that it's just food. Like it's food at the end of the day. I think people do have this weird I guess misconception that vegan food is something like you need to eat like these crazy things and all of this and all of that, but you can eat very normally and really healthily being vegan. It takes some minor adjustments at the beginning. I think you go from having chicken breast and salmon to eating more like whole foods like chickpeas and beans and tofu and things like that, and you're not always going to like things the first time you try them, but I think I always say if you eat a plain boiled piece of chicken breast, no salt, no pepper, you're not really going to like it. It just, meat on its own doesn't really have much flavor. And it's the same with things like tofu and chickpeas and all that stuff. It's just the way you cook them. So, my advice is always experiment a little bit. Follow obviously me on social media, of course, to find the best recipes to make this food taste good. And don't be harsh on yourself. I think for too long veganism has been like almost a bad word. It's kind of been synonymous with people who like kind of hippies and people who like throw paint at like red paint at people wearing like fur coats, and kind of those crazy like activists, which they're doing their thing their own way. Like I rate it, you do you, but I've always found if you kind of the expression kill people with kindness, it works better. So if you go to my Instagram page, you're not going to see me posting, oh, here's a video of this cow suffering and and these chickens and pigs live in squalor, like how can you do this? Like everyone's got their choices, and I found that actually just being a little bit more gentle with people and being a little bit more compassionate as well all round kind of works. It's a better approach, and just say look, vegan food isn't for everyone. Try it once or twice a week. You might realize that actually your spaghetti pomodoro that you already eat, your tomato pasta and your toast with peanut butter and your the stuff that you like already is already vegan, and you just don't realize. It doesn't have to have a label. As I said at the beginning, it's just food. So yeah, I always tell people just to take it easy. Don't be so harsh on themselves, especially in Veganuary. People are so like militant. January 1st, I've got to change my whole life. Like you don't have to. Like if you try something, if you're doing like 75 hard and you give up after 7 days, like it is what it is. Don't kill yourself on it. Just keep plugging away, and if you want to make those changes in your life, you can.
So if someone was to go to your Instagram page, there's loads and loads of recipes, of vegan recipes to cook. But if you could pick one which would be like the best recipe on like a student budget for a student to cook, that's easy to cook, what would you recommend? Putting
Ooh,
spot there.
yeah, okay. A student budget that's easy to cook. I mean, I don't think vegan food is necessarily expensive. I think you can eat vegan food relatively inexpensively, but I suppose when you're balancing budget with health, like it kind of something's got to give, unfortunately. Like you can't have like really cheap food that's vegan, that's healthy, that's cheap. Like something is always you're gonna lose something in the balance there. Um, I know being a student, I was a student for a long time, and for me, health always was the one thing that kind of went out the window because it's unfortunately is a lot cheaper to be unhealthy than it is to be healthy. There's a recipe that I lived off of as a student, which I used to call crack noodles. I can't call them crack noodles anymore because people take offense to. They were called crack noodles because they were addictive. People don't like the terminology of referencing drug use towards food, so they're now called the BVK noodles, the Ben's Vegan Kitchen noodles. They're like a 3 or 4 ingredient recipe which taste amazing, and they are really quick, really easy to make. I'd say per portion they probably cost like £3, if that. So I'd say that's pretty cheap. You can probably get cheaper, but yeah, I would definitely tell people, especially students, to give that one a try.
Yeah. So obviously it's Veganuary right now, so lots of people are trying out being vegan. As someone who's vegan yourself, like all year round, what do you think about the campaign?
Yeah, I think it's look, I think having these month-long things throughout the year can be like pretty tiring, especially for I can only imagine like the people who run like supermarkets and stuff. Like there's always something that they've got to like tap into. There's religious holidays, there's so every month there's another month going on. But I think it's I quite like that it's in January because it gives people opportunity to start the year doing something different. But I also think there is a misconception that, oh, I'm going to go vegan for a month, therefore I'm going to be really healthy and lose weight and whatever. Like, I don't personally like the fact that it is the beginning of the month because of that. Because actually, if you look at the recipes that I put out, especially the ones that I'm doing in Veganuary, like if I ate like that all the time, like I would be so fat because it's not healthy food. It just happens to be vegan, and I think that's I never want to say like, oh, my recipes are healthy, it's really good for you. So I think there is that kind of confusion of yeah, it's January, you've got to be healthy, so do something different. I'm going to be vegan, so maybe I would suggest moving it to like Vegvember or something. Maybe it doesn't work so well, but no, look, I like it. I think anything that helps people do something a little bit differently and just kind of mix things up a little bit is always good. And I always say to people, it's good to try things and put yourself out of your comfort zone. So yeah, I'm happy that vegans have a month. I think Jews should have a month as well. We should do June, but with an EW. That's good. I'll copyright that one.
Yeah, I think you should put in the trademark now.
Let's do it before you guys steal it.
Um, talking of like creating things, UJess is currently curating a student cookbook with loads of student recipes by students for students to allow students to come together, share their recipes, and the goal is to distribute it for students to then learn quick and easy student recipes. What would be your top tips when like creating a recipe for like a meal?
I think especially if you want to budget whilst you're cooking. The most important thing is to prep. I find that if you go to the supermarket and you don't know what you're making, or if you're hungry, if you're a student, you might be intoxicated, or you might be hungover, or you might have participated in some illegal activities that I don't want to mention. But all of these things that can change your appetite means that you're going to go to the supermarket and you're going to just pick up a load of like rubbish that you're not really going to benefit from. I know back in the day when I was hungover, and I say back in the day like I'm really old. Even now, when I'm hungover and I go to the supermarket, I will end up just buying stuff that I don't need. So and always end up as well spending way more money. So I would definitely suggest the best thing to do is to plan your meals ahead of time and buy only what you need for those meals. It means you're going to save money and not waste it. I think the worst thing is people go and they buy like, oh, look at all these like vegetables, these are great, and they just put them in the fridge and they just go off because they have no, oh, I've seen there's peppers on offer, you can get 5 peppers for £1. That's great, but if you have no recipe for peppers and you don't know what you're going to do with them, they're just going to sit there. I literally have like 5 peppers sat in my fridge right now. I don't know what to do with them because I haven't listened to my own advice and I haven't prepped anything. So yeah, definitely from a student point of view, prep and yeah, don't buy stuff that you don't need.
Yeah, so I know you mentioned before that you were working in media for a bit, but just to kind of go back to your social media platform, was there anything specifically that kind of triggered you to start posting?
It was just more of trying to prove to myself, I think something that you realize a lot in later life is like imposter syndrome is very real. I think unfortunately people are starting to get it sooner and sooner in life, but I've realized very much having worked across many companies with many different people, actually no one really knows what they're doing. Everyone's just sort of winging it. Don't get me wrong, I think there are industries where that isn't true. Surgeons and like people like that. Like I'd like to think they do know what they're doing,
I
but
would hope so.
you would hope so, yeah. But I think especially in creative industries, people get lucky. I've worked with people who have been like my manager's manager, and I've been like, you're an idiot. Like you literally don't know anything, and I know way more than you, and whatever. But at the same time, you're doing stuff, and you're like, oh, maybe I don't really know what I'm doing, and maybe I'm just here because I blagged the interview or whatever. And you're sat there looking at a computer screen, being like, I've no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. That being said, the thing that led me to post more on social media was the fact that in my head I was like, well, I've been doing this for ages. Every job that I've worked at, the Facebook page, the Twitter page, whatever it was, has grown. The Instagram page has grown. Like I must have had something to do with that. So let me just prove to myself that I kind of do know how to do it. And that was it really. It was just a way to prove to myself that actually, yeah, I kind of do know how to make social media work. And yeah, I think thus far I have definitely kind of shook off that imposter syndrome. And as I said, I'm over 500,000 followers across all platforms on social media. So I think obviously I'd like to think now that I do know what I'm doing, and no one's gonna, especially me, not doubt it anymore. So yeah, that was the main thing that got me going.
So you mentioned how you now have over 500,000 followers across all platforms, and you mentioned how you left your job when you were only at 40,000. What did you find it challenging to grow an audience from like 0 to 40,000 and onwards up until where you are now? And if so, how come?
You mean, did I find it more challenging from 0 to 40 than from 40 to
Yeah,
now, or just in general?
in general, but also from 0 to 40.
Yeah, I think probably 0 to 40 was harder and then took me a lot longer because it was something that I was doing on the side. Like I'd have to work like evenings, like lunch breaks, weekends, and it would have been a lot easier to give up. I remember I think for the first like 2 years of having my Instagram page, I think I posted like every single day without fail. Like even if it was a horrible picture of like here's me eating breakfast bowl or whatever, I would still make sure to get it up. So that was actually probably more challenging than what I do now because it wasn't bringing me anything per se. And I think we live in a world of instant gratification where people want things immediately. So yeah, people kind of give up on things when they don't see them working out straight away. So yeah, I think it was definitely harder at the beginning because yeah, I could have just stopped, and at the end of the day, I was like, I just got to keep plugging away. I had to learn how to become, not only someone who knows how to post on social media, I had to learn how to become a videographer, a video editor, like a presenter, all of these things. It's multifaceted, so it's not easy, and I think it's something that a lot of people take for granted. You guys are lucky, you're young, you just know how to do this stuff. I know I'm not old, but learning to video edit, I see like my younger cousins and stuff on TikTok, and they're just putting together these like well made videos. I'm like, what are you using to make that? They're like, oh yeah, I just edit on TikTok. I'm like, well, I don't even know how to edit on TikTok. But yeah, I'm pretty good at doing what I do now, so I think people now come to me for advice as opposed to me seeking out younger people to work out what to do. So yeah, I'm doing all right.
Speaking of young people, what would you say, because obviously it's a student podcast, what would you say is the best way that you found to engage young people on social media?
My honest answer is to just keep dressing like them, to be honest. Yeah, I think people are always shocked when they find out my age because they're like, surely you're like 25, and I'm like, nah, I was. I found the best way to just engage with them is, I don't know, I think I watch a lot of content, and I suppose most people making content are younger than I am. It's just kind of staying on top of trends and just understanding it a little bit more. I think I know a lot of people who are late 30s, early 40s who kind of do what I do, and I don't think it really translates so well. They dress their age and I don't, and I don't know, I feel like I'm still part of like youth culture. I listen to similar sort of music, and yeah, I don't know, I feel like just staying on top of all of it just makes it a lot easier. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it completely makes sense. Um, and you spoke earlier about how you've also been outspoken about your Jewish culture online as well. Um, what has your experience been like being openly and proudly Jewish or online in the public eye?
It's been really difficult, really, especially in the last 3 months, because I've just kind of opened myself up to a world full of hate. But I always see it as what I'm going through is nowhere near as bad as what they're going through in Israel. So for me, it's always been a no-brainer. I think the thing that I always say as the best bit of advice to people when they're looking, people always ask me, "Oh, how do I get into social media? Like, how do I do this?" And if you look at the videos that I make, there's nothing unique about them necessarily. Like, if you want to find, let's say, a recipe for pasta, you'll find 100,000 videos of people making pasta. But the only thing that I do on my page that is unique and different is me. Is I'm in the videos, and I am what's different and what sets my videos apart from everyone else. And the only way you can be unique is by being yourself. So I've always felt it really important to be myself, and I am Jewish, and I'm proud to be a Jew. I wear my high necklace in all my videos. I did a whole series on veganizing Ashkenazi food called Oi Vegan, which is, yeah, it's always gets a little bit of a laugh. I feel like it's what sets me apart. I think, apart from if I didn't do that and if I wasn't talking about that, I would just be a generic white guy with a little hat on making food that's a vegan. Like, it's been done. So yeah, being outspoken about being Jewish is always been like vitally important to me, and it's what sets me apart as well. I think having a platform is something that I don't take for granted. It's a great thing to have, and I remember posting around like October 8th or 9th about everything that was going on, and I'd sort of said, I'm going to share this stuff. If I never make another penny from social media, and malasot, as they say in Israel, kind of, so be it. It is what it is. I'm going to talk about this because no one else is, and it's important for me to share this. I lost 20,000 followers in 2 weeks from October 7th, but I've also gained 150,000 followers almost since October 7th. So it swings and roundabouts. I think for every person who's messaged me saying, you're a Zionist piece of shit or whatever, I don't know if I can swear, apologies if I can't, but these are the messages that I've been getting, and that's one of the nicer messages. So for every one person that sent me a horrible message, I've had maybe 20 plus, 30 plus to every one bad message, or people being like, thank you so much, it means so much, keep speaking out, keep doing this, keep doing that. So I know it's making a difference. I know people have become more unapologetically Jewish, which is a mental statement. It's something that is very true, but we need to be more unapologetically Jewish. Who are we apologizing to for being Jewish? That's who we are. It's thousands of years worth of history that we're all lucky enough to kind of be a part of. And I think when you share the positives, people will pick out the negatives. I shared yesterday, don't forget the faces of the hostages, and getting messages from people, oh yeah, but what about the 30,000 dead civilians and this and that, and Israel's trash and you're a piece of work. And it's like, if I can't talk about these literal teenage girls who have been kidnapped and post about it on my page, what can I talk about? So yeah, I think it would be a lot easier for me to kind of talk about the stuff that everyone else is talking about. I'm sure I probably would have got more followers if I was, sharing all that stuff, but it's not who I am. It's not what I'm about. And I think it's important for me to keep being myself and to keep talking about being Jewish and, showing that it's okay to, especially when they were saying, take off your kippot, don't do this, don't do that. I was doing the opposite. So yeah, for me, I think I'll always be this way. And, hopefully, well, I know they have, but hopefully people continue to be influenced by me and say, well, if this guy's not afraid, maybe I don't need to be afraid either.
Thank you very much. We're just going to end on a few quick fire questions. That's how we end each podcast with every guest. So to start with, who's your biggest role model?
My dad.
Favorite social media trend?
Favorite social media trend. I liked at the beginning of lockdown when everyone was dancing to that Weekend song. They were doing like
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
fun. That was an innocent time.
Yeah. And finally, what is your favorite Jewish food?
Latkes.
Good answer.
Or bamba. Latkes or bamba.
Both good answers.
Yeah, I have latkes then bamba. I think that's the answer.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much for joining us today on the podcast. We've really enjoyed learning about your story and everything you've been up to. So thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing you again soon.
As do I. Thank you for having me.